Just when Paul Pogba thought his nightmare was finally over, another setback arrived. After serving an 18-month doping suspension and finally returning to professional football, Pogba was supposed to be starting a completely new chapter at Monaco. A fresh club, a fresh league, a fresh opportunity. But now, after just 6 appearances for Monaco, another injury has put his comeback in doubt. And with reports that Monaco and Pogba are discussing the possibility of ending his contract, the future of one of football's most gifted midfielders is once again uncertain. And honestly, it's hard to believe this is the same player who was once destined to rule world football. Because before the injuries, before the suspension, before the controversy, Paul Pogba wasn't just a talented midfielder. He was supposed to be one of the best players of his generation. This is the story of Paul Pogba. The rise, the fall, and the comeback nobody knows how to predict. Before the headlines, the massive transfer fee, the injuries, and the controversy, there was just a kid who wanted to play football. Pogba grew up in France, in a family where football was already a major part of life. And from a young age, his talent was impossible to ignore. Eventually, that talent took him to England. Manchester United saw something special in the young French midfielder and brought him to the academy. Pogba had the technique, the physicality, the confidence, and most importantly, he had that rare ability to make things look easy. But there was a problem. Pogba wanted to play. And at Manchester United, opportunities in the first team weren't coming quickly enough. So in 2012, the teenager made a decision that would completely change his career. He left Manchester United and headed to Italy. At Juventus, everything changed. Suddenly, Pogba wasn't just a promising academy player anymore. He was playing alongside experienced stars, and he looked like he belonged. At just 19 years old, he began making an impact in one of Europe's biggest clubs. Powerful, elegant, technical, creative, and capable of producing moments that made you wonder, how is this guy a teenager? Pogba could carry the ball through midfield. He could pick out passes from impossible angles. He could strike the ball from distance. And physically, he looked almost impossible to stop. Then came the trophies. Serie A, Coppa Italia, Super Cups, and individual recognition. In 2013, Pogba won the Golden Boy Award. By 2015, he had established himself as one of the most exciting midfielders in world football. Juventus had discovered a superstar, and Manchester United had a problem, because the kid they had allowed to leave was becoming exactly the player they had hoped he would be. In 2016, Manchester United came calling again. But this time, they weren't signing the academy kid. They were signing one of the biggest young stars in world football. Manchester United paid Juventus 105 million euros for Paul Pogba, with the deal potentially rising by another 5 million through conditions. At the time, it was a world record transfer. The boy who had left Manchester had returned to Old Trafford as a superstar, and the expectations were enormous. Pogba was supposed to become the face of a new Manchester United, the midfielder who would control games, score spectacular goals, win trophies, and eventually become one of the greatest players in the world. And for a while, it looked like the dream was becoming reality. Then came 2018. France had assembled one of the most talented squads in international football. And Pogba wasn't simply another player in that team. He was one of the leaders, one of the personalities, one of the players France needed to perform when it mattered most. And in Russia, France went all the way. Pogba scored in the final against Croatia. France won 4-2. And Paul Pogba was a World Cup champion at just 25 years old. Think about that. He had already played for Manchester United. He had conquered Italy with Juventus. He had returned to England for a world record fee. And now, he was a World Cup winner. For many footballers, that would be the peak of their career. But Paul Pogba was only 25. It felt like the best was still ahead. But football doesn't always follow the script. After the World Cup, things began to change. Injuries became a recurring problem. His performances became inconsistent. Manchester United changed managers, and Pogba increasingly found himself at the center of criticism. The expectations surrounding him were enormous. Every misplaced pass was analyzed. Every bad performance became a headline. Every injury raised another question. Was Pogba still the player everyone thought he was? Or had the expectations simply become impossible to meet? And then another major setback. In 2022, after 6 years at Manchester United, Pogba left the club as a free agent. He returned to Juventus. It was supposed to be another fresh start. A return to the place where he had first become a superstar. But instead, it became the beginning of one of the darkest periods of his career. Injuries continued to affect him. His second spell at Juventus never really got going. During the 2022-23 season, he managed only a handful of appearances. And then, in September 2023, everything changed. After Juventus' opening Serie A match of the season against Udinese, Pogba was provisionally suspended following a positive test of DHEA, a banned substance. The initial punishment was devastating. 4 years. For a footballer, 4 years can feel like a lifetime. Pogba appealed, and in October 2024, the Court of Arbitration for Sports reduced the suspension from 4 years to 18 months after asserting that the ingestion of the banned substance was non-intentional, while also stating that he should have exercised greater care. Suddenly, the nightmare had an ending date, March 2025. Pogba could play football again, and he had one question to answer: could he still become Paul Pogba? After his suspension ended, Pogba was no longer the same 25 years old superstar who conquered the world. He was older. He had barely played competitive minutes for years, and he had spent an enormous amount of time watching the game from the outside. But he still believed. In June 2025, Pogba signed a 2-year contract to Monaco. And when he put pen to paper, getting another chance, he called the moment La Renaissance, the rebirth. After everything that happened, Pogba was finally back. In November 2025, more than 2 years after his last competitive appearance for Juventus, Pogba finally returned to professional football. He came off the bench for Monaco against Rennes. And for a player who had spent so long away from the game, even a few minutes felt significant. He wasn't old Pogba yet. He didn't need to be. The first objective was simply to play again, to stay healthy, to rebuild his body, to rebuild his confidence, and maybe, just maybe, to remind the world what he could still do. But football had another twist waiting for him. In 2026, Pogba's comeback has struggled to gather momentum. He has only made 6 appearances for Monaco, totaling around 115 minutes. And during pre-season in England, he suffered another hamstring injury. Now, reports say Monaco and Pogba are discussing the possibility of ending his contract. And here's the important part. The discussion reportedly took place before the latest injury. So this isn't simply the story of one injury ending Monaco career. At his best, Pogba was spectacular. But football doesn't remember potential forever. Eventually, you have to be able to play. And that's what makes Paul Pogba's story so difficult to watch. Because we've already seen what he could become. We've seen the teenager at Juventus. We've seen the midfielder dominating Serie A. We've seen the world record transfer. We've seen the World Cup final. We've seen the trophies in his hands. And now, we're watching a 33-year-old footballer trying to find a way back. So the question isn't whether Paul Pogba was talented. We already know the answer. The question is, does Paul Pogba still have one great chapter left? Maybe Pogba's story isn't over. Maybe this is just another chapter in one of football's most complicated careers. Because if there's one thing Paul Pogba has shown us, is that he's never been short of comebacks. From Manchester United Academy to Juventus to Manchester United again, to becoming a World Cup champion, to a doping suspension, to Monaco, and now another upsetting moment. The world is waiting to see what happens next. Can Paul Pogba rise one more time, or has football finally reached the final chapter? This is Beyond the Pitch Africa. If you want to see what happens next in Paul Pogba's story, subscribe, because this story isn't finished yet.